Welcome to another exciting tutorial on how to build web documents. In this particular case, we're going to build a horizontal drop-down menu totally from scratch. Well, sort of from scratch. We're gonna have the text on there. I don't want to waste time in the video typing text in from scratch. So that's going to be our start. I'm going to share with you how it thinks, how Dreamweaver thinks, how HTML, CSS3 works. We're going to be doing some HTML5 and CSS tricks with rounded boxes and drop shadow. So here's our objective. We're going to take this simple unordered list and turn it into this. Now this is done totally 100% without any kind of JavaScript. This is purely just CSS and HTML smart, clever markup. So let's get started. So as an example, if I go into I'm in Firefox right now. If I go to View and I turn the page styles off, notice that it's simple, just markup. It's just unordered list in list items. Now at this point, if you're new to Dreamweaver or new to HTML, you should understand some basic markup procedures like putting things in an unordered list. All menus by default, whether horizontal or vertical, are part of an unordered list. Now what's important to understand about HTML markup, or HTML5 for that matter, is that you can basically embed an HTML unordered list inside of an unordered list. So as an example, if I Command U or Control U on Windows and go down to my markup, now we're going to go into Dreamweaver and do this, but I just want to share with you some basic understandings. Okay. Now, my objective is to teach you how to use Dreamweaver to do all the heavy lifting for you, but at the same time, you have to have an understanding of how markup is put together, especially when you're building unordered lists for drop-down menus and things like this. So as an example, this is really simple. I'm not going to hurt your brain, I promise. So what I have here is an opening tag called nav. Okay, now that's an HTML5 nav tag. That's not a div tag. It's an HTML5, which is going to be SEO friendly for multiple devices like iPad, iPhone. So you definitely want to create documents that are HTML5 compatible. So what I have is, of course, my opening nav tag and my closing nav tag. Then I have the content of my menu, which basically resides inside of an unordered list. So unordered list opening, unordered list closing. Now again, we're going to build this in Dreamweaver without writing code from scratch, but it is important, especially with something like this, to understand that the structure is tagged correctly, otherwise the drop-down menu is not going to work. So I typically don't go into code in my Dreamweaver videos because I don't want to confuse you, because Dreamweaver will do it for you, but it is very important to understand the structure. So what I have here again is an open unordered list and a closing unordered list. Then I have what's called embedded unordered lists. So as an example, here's an unordered list inside of an unordered list. So therefore, the rule structure, when I create the rule in CSS, that's going to be an unordered list inside of an unordered list. Then I would have a sub-drop-down menu from here. It's an unordered list inside of an unordered list inside of an unordered list. So it's exactly that type of thinking when you create your rule structure in your CSS palette inside of Dreamweaver. And again, we're going to do this totally from scratch. So it's kind of like, say, I want to pick the red car. The red car inside of the blue parking lot. So the red car is inside the blue parking lot, or do you want to just talk about a red car in general? So what I'm sharing with you is that you can put things inside of things, inside of things, inside of things, and talk to that specifically. So if you put an unordered list inside of an unordered list inside of an unordered list, the advantage of that type of thinking is I can talk to this unordered list and I can style it, colorize it, font size, etc., different from this because it's a different structure. So let's go into Dreamweaver and build this from scratch. So here we are in Dreamweaver, and the only thing I have here, and again guys, I'm not going to start this totally from scratch because this is a free demo of what my teaching style is about and how to involve you in the thinking. So I do have an asterisk tag, which is my universal wildcard tag, and that's set to 0, 0. So what that's going to do for us is get rid of all the space in my document, and of course the body tag. Now of course, if you want to change your existing tag, it's simply double click. Now, what's important to understand again, and I'm going to review this, inside of Dreamweaver, we can look at how this was constructed. So as an example, under the View menu, viewing is seeing, View, Toolbars. Make sure you have your style rendering icon, which is this icon right here, turned on. So it's View Toolbars and make sure it's turned on. If I had to turn it off, this would disappear. So as an example, by default, if you're new to Dreamweaver, that's not available to you. I happen to be in Dreamweaver CS6 and I'm working in classic mode. If you're not in CS6, you can do most of what we're going to do today in CS5 and CS 5.5 with the exception of your rounded corners and boxes. You can still write the code by hand, but in CS6 it does it for you in a very simple interface. And that's another reason to be on CS6. Now, if you're new to Udemy, Udemy has some great little tools. If you're watching this video on udemy.com, you can take notes, you can download the file, you can ask me questions, etc., etc. If you're watching this on YouTube, welcome to you as well, but I highly suggest you go to udemy.com/think, learn, earn, and learn how to build professional websites, professional digital documents using InDesign, Dreamweaver, any software program I teach it with Adobe. Now, a couple people have asked about Flash. Flash is kind of dead to me. I don't teach Flash anymore. I've been teaching Flash for probably 18, 19 years, but quite frankly, I haven't had a request to build a Flash site in well over a year and a half. And I don't teach it anymore, and I don't publish it. So that's the name of that tune. Okay, so here's what we need to do. So with View, Toolbars, Style Render, Turn On, we're now going to click this icon, and now we can see the structure of this markup. Now, what do I mean by markup? Well, this is simply just text on a page until you, the intelligent being, marks it up, meaning I mark it up with tags. So as an example, if I'm just going to start a brand new document from scratch here. And I'm just going to call this my menu. And I'm going to save this, and I'll just put this here and just call this my test menu. Now, there's a lot of things we're not going to cover here because this is not a full, complete course. This is kind of to give you for instance, on how I teach my classes, on how I interact with my students, and more importantly, how I get you to think about the software. Now, what I want to share with you is that this markup, so here I just have a blank page, totally started from scratch. The only thing I did was save the file and title this. This goes into the browser title. So that's very important. So I'm just going to do a series of menus. I'm going to just type in the word 1, and I'm going to type in 2, and I'm going to type in 3. Now, what I like to have here, first of all, if this is in fact going to be a menu, this has to be part of an unordered list. So let me share with you what I'm talking about. So I happen to jump over to YouTube for a second to share with you that YouTube, and the reason I'm picking this up, by the way, is that this has a bunch of unordered lists. Now, this happens to be an ordered list. An ordered list, the difference meaning that it has numbers next to it. So as an example, if I went to my view menu right now and turned the CSS styles off, now I'm doing this inside of Firefox. What you'll have here is a series of unordered lists, and that's how menus are put together. Now, again, unordered list is part of the UL tag that I talked about a couple of minutes ago. So the different types of lists that you can have as far as a menu goes is either an unordered list, which is this, or an ordered list. And again, the difference is that the ordered list has numbers next to it. So if you're going to have, say, David Letterman's top 10 or your favorite cheesecake recipes, the only difference is that it's an ordered list versus an unordered list. Ordered list has numbers next to it. You get that? So, what we're going to do here, of course, is put this, in order to affect this, we're going to select this. Now, a simple way to select the two is your body tag selector. We're going to come over here to our property panel and say unordered list. So there's my unordered list that has dots. Now, I'm not going to share with you right now until we go back into your menu document to create the rule structure. I just want you to focus on the markup. So we're going to hit the return key. First of all, I'll do this afterwards. I'm going to hit the return key, and this is going to be a sub of 1. So I'm going to call this sub 1. Then I'm going to simply put my cursor here and hit the tab key. What that does, that basically makes a unordered list inside of an unordered list. So see, it's an unordered list inside of an unordered list. Now, if I hit the return key and do sub 2, then it's going to follow that same unordered list instead of unordered list. So I didn't have to go to my code to do this. I didn't have to know how to write this from scratch. I'm sharing with you how Dreamweaver will do the heavy lifting for you. So let's come down to 2 for a second. I'm going to hit the return key, and I'm going to pick sub 2. And again, I'm going to make sure my cursor's over here to the left, and I'm going to hit the tab key. Then I'm going to hit the return key again, and I'm going to say sub 2. So this is basically 2 inside of 2, and I'm at the tab key again. So what did that do for me? Well, that put an unordered list inside of an unordered list, inside of an unordered list for the very simple reason that I can now talk through it differently. Now, I'm going to just select this unordered list, and then based on these choices, and this is something you can do in CS6 collectively, I'm just going to come down here and put in the pound symbol. Now, for those, again, that are new to Dreamweaver and HTML or HTML5, I'm just making a hyperlink by putting a placeholder of a hyperlink. Okay, so this is basically what's happening right now. So I just have an unordered list inside of an unordered list inside of an unordered list. So if I went to my CSS and turned it back on right now it's on, right now it's off. Right now you're not going to see a difference because I haven't created any CSS rules. Okay, so I'm just going to keep this really simple. So here's what we can do. By default, the unordered list is going to look just like this. Even if I go to live view inside of Dreamweaver, it's going to look just like that because I haven't created any rule structure, right? So here's what I want to be able to do. We're going to leave the parent URL, unordered list exactly the way it is. We're just going to affect this one. So now that's depending on where you are. If I put my cursor here, you will see that I can affect this one. We're going to affect both. So in this particular case, it doesn't matter which one of these I select because they're both unordered list inside of an unordered list. So I'm going to write a rule structure that talks to this unordered list. And this is a simple way to do it. Now again, there's absolutely zero, as in no, not a nil, nothing, no CSS rules for this new document that I just created. Okay, so I'm going to create a simple rule for the unordered list inside of the unordered list. I'm just going to select the tag, come over here and make a rule. So I'm going to come down here to compound. Compound simply means combination. So I couldn't do it from here, that would just select the unordered list. But you can do it from here. Compound simply means combination. Now when I write my rule for my selector, which is the unordered list, inside the list item, inside the unordered list, I don't want to write the word body a gazillion times. I'm just going to say less specific. And I'm going to do something very, very, very simple, very straightforward. I'm simply going to maybe change that to an uppercase. So I can do that by coming right here and saying uppercase. So if I hit the apply option and I go back to my CSS rule structure, see I had my CSS rules turned off by default. Now they're back on, so it's going to adhere to this rule structure, which is simply the unordered list inside the unordered list. Now, if you're wondering why it also affected that, because by default, that's a parent-child relationship. Okay, that's a parent-child relationship. So by default, the child is going to inherit from the parent. So what's happening right now is the unordered list inside the unordered list, by default, is going to inherit from this because I have no rule specifically for this one. Does that make sense to you? Okay, so here's how it works with the whole CSS rule structure. It's a parent-child relationship. So what that means is if you don't make a decision as a child, if you don't make a decision or you have no rules, your parents control what you do. So right now, the parent tag to this unordered list by default is this, because this does have a rule structure. So now I'm going to create a rule structure for this unordered list specifically. So I'm going to select the tag and make a rule. In order to affect the tag, of course, we need to select the tag. And again, that is combination, which simply means compound rule. It's a combination of more than one rule. I have more than one tag selected, so I can basically talk to more than one tag at the same time with compound. Again, I'm less specific. Now, just because we can, again, I'm going to keep this really simple here. So we're going to change this to, let's basically just put a line through this, and let's go ahead and make this red. Now watch what happens. If I hit the apply option, it has a line through, but it's not red, because what's happening is the A tag is overriding that. So basically this is not going to become red because the A tag has its own set of parameters. Okay, but I can do other things. I'm not going to do the color. I'm going to change, perhaps if I go here and change the font size to something really drastic, and in fact that is going to talk to it. Now I'm not saying you'd want to do this, but I'm just sharing with it you could do this. So what I've done for the unordered list, inside the unordered list, inside the unordered list, I said make it bigger and put a line through it. And that's exactly what it did. So for those of you that are new to this whole understanding of CSS and tags, here's what you got to consider. The first thing you need to do is mark up your content with tags. So as an example, this content, I'm just going to go to code for a second. This content, which is originally just a couple pieces of text that we put on the page, and then through Dreamweaver's interface, we said, okay, make that content an unordered list. Then when I hit the return key, so if I come down here to the return key, by default, if I make that 4, see, by default, and I'm just going to put the pound symbol here. Now, if you really want to be lazy, what you can do is I can just copy that, hit the return key, paste, I'm sorry, just copy this, hit the return key, paste, and then just, change its name. That's really being lazy. Now again, if this is now a separate unordered list because I simply hit the return key. However, if I was at the tab key, then it becomes an unordered list inside of an unordered list. So let's move back to our document. So again, don't confuse the rules with the tags, which is the markup for the content. And again, content can be text, content could be graphics, images, JPEGs, PNGs. Content could be a Swift file for your Flash files. Content could be a QuickTime movie. And then how it's marked up or how it's tagged is how the browser decides what type of content that is. Then you, the intelligent carbon-based being, create the rules for the content. And that's what this is. In fact, if you put your cursor down here, what does that say? That says new CSS rule. Okay, so I just want to really drive that message home. So what we can now do is we can start building rules for this content. Okay, we're just simply building rules for the content. Now again, I'm not going to go into every little nuance of doing this because I would do this in a more A to Z type of course, which is my premium courses. So I highly suggest that you take advantage of that because even though I do offer some things for free, I don't do everything for free. I assume you don't work for free. So this is how I pay my bills. This is how I put my daughter through college. This is how I support my 3 grandkids. Yes, hard to believe. I'll be 54 this May, and I don't ask. Just don't ask how that happened. And also take care of my wonderful girlfriend over the past 20 years by you subscribing and supporting me financially. Yes, I'll be totally blunt, totally honest, with supporting my videos. So let's move forward here. So what I have going on here is I have to make rules for our tags. Now, to fast forward here, I'm just going to show you the finished product here. So here's my finished product, and here is all my rules for all my tags. Now again, in my regular course, I will break down exactly how to do this start to finish. But in a nutshell, it's the same document. So as an example, if I click right here, you will see that this is my basic markup. So that markup is identical to this markup. See, here's my 2 documents. Here's this document, here's the finished document. The markup is the same. However, when you turn on your CSS rules, that's where the magic happens. So as an example, if I was to go to live view right now, you would see everything happening here. So basically, this is just, there's no extras, there's no JavaScript in here. It's really, really simple. It's really, really straightforward. Okay, so I'm going to just give you a little, for instance, on how this is put together. So what I have going on here is I made a rule for the nav tag. Now, how did I do that? Well, let's go back to this document that doesn't have a nav tag. So first of all, I need to tag my contents. Well, how do I do that? Well, actually, my mistake on that. This does have a nav tag, I just don't have a nav rule. So my mistake, I forgot that I actually did that. So if this didn't have a nav rule, so as an example, I'm going to show you a really cool trick here. I'm going to actually remove the nav tag. And this is something you can do in Dreamweaver. Of course, you can go into the code to do this, but if you're code phobic and you don't want to learn how to write this code from scratch, let Dreamweaver do it for you. Okay? So if I hold down the Control key, Macintosh, or right-click Windows, I'm simply going to remove the tag. Now, what did that do? I'm not removing the contents. I'm not removing the words. I'm simply taking away that tag. Now, the advantage of what I just did by using the Dreamweaver interface is if I did this by hand in code, I'm going to undo this. Watch down here. I would have to remove this tag and then scroll all the way down to the bottom and remove the bottom tag. Now again, I'm a lazy guy. Time is money. I don't have time to basically go into my code by hand. I want Dreamweaver to do the heavy lifting for me. Okay, so again, I'm just going to select this tag and hold down the Control key or right click on Windows, and remove the tag. Now it doesn't have a tag. Now this is just an unordered list. So now if I do want to give it a tag, what could be simpler than this? Quick tag selector, quick tag editor. I could basically insert tags by simply hitting Command T. Command T. Now, what's important to understand here is that sometimes Dreamweaver gets a little confused understanding what to do with that selector. So I'm going to select the body tag and hit Command T. So I don't want to select the unordered list because what that's going to assume, Dreamweaver is going to assume that I want to change that, and I don't want to change that. So we're going to select the contents itself, which is the body tag. Now, when I hit Command T for Macintosh, for a quick tag selector, or Control T for Windows, I can just type in the word NAV, and it appears right here. Now, what is nav? Nav is an HTML5 selector tag, which means it's going to create semantic web markup. Okay, so it's very important to understand to do that one step at a time. Now, another way I can do this if you get really confused with that is I can pre-select. I just undo that for a second. I can also pre-select the unordered list. And again, if you're code phobic, okay, fine, I get that. But if you go here for a second, right now the unordered list is physically selected. So from here, I can still use that same little shortcut, Command T, for a quick tag editor. NAB, hit the return key once, twice. So now that has been surrounded with a nav tag, just like it was before. So if you want to create a rule for your nav tag, select the tag, make a rule. So understand something very important. Selecting this tag is different than selecting this tag, which is different than selecting this tag. In order to affect the tag, I have to select the tag. But first of all, I have to apply the tag. The content has to be tagged first before I can even think about making a rule. Okay, so in this finished product over here, what's actually going on, and I'm going to turn the CSS back off for a second. So this is actually inside of the tag. Now there's a rule for the tag. Now let's say as an example, and there's a little production technique with Dreamweaver. Let's say, hey, you didn't build this, but you need to change this. Well, you're going, well, what does all this stuff mean? So here's a little technique you can use. So what you can do is if you're in, first of all, in live view. Actually, you don't have to be in live view. You just have to be in current over here. If I select current, wherever I put my cursor, see, that's going to currently select whatever tag I'm trying to talk to. So in this particular case, I want to talk to the nav tag. But if you're not sure that you have a nav rule for that, then selecting current will do it for you, but you have to be selected on current. The other thing you can do in Dreamweaver is you can go to live view and then go to inspect, and wherever you put your cursor, wherever I put my cursor here, it's going to automatically select your CSS properties over here to the right. So what's happening right now is I'm going to go to live view for a second. So this is my CSS rules on, this is my CSS rules off. So again, this has to return on in order to see those changes. So if it's off, you're not going to see the changes over here. So I'm going to go back to current again, and wherever I put my cursor, you're going to see the tag selector. And if I go to live view and inspect wherever I put my cursor, you will see exactly how I can change those colors. See, look, this color right here is, if you pay attention, I can't do both at the same time. But if you put your cursor down here, see, that's exactly that color. And if you wanted to change that color, it's as simple as clicking it once, coming in here. I'm going to change the color to a dark blue color as an example. So now it's a dark blue. It's really, really that simple. Okay, so I didn't have to write any code from scratch, but what I'm sharing with you is that once you get the markup, I think the most difficult thing of this is to understand how to contain it inside of tags, which we've done by marking up our content. So again, as I demonstrated, I simply typed in the word one, hit the return key, return key, return key, and then put that whole thing in an unordered list. Again, if you want a submenu, it's simply the tab key. So as an example, if I had a whole bunch of sub choices for Dreamweaver courses, which I do on udemy.com, I can hit the tab key, and that would become, and then I can say, okay, from here I want to hit the tab key again, and then from here I want to hit the tab key again. So what would that be? Well, that would be an unordered list inside of an unordered list inside of an unordered list, right? So I'm going to go ahead and just file, save as, and just call this, menu sub, or anything that makes sense to you. Now, you do want to get in the habit of naming your document something intelligent. So therefore, not something that it means, not that it means something to you for today or next week or next month, but something that means something to you a year from now. So if I go to my file menu, and again, this is just a new markup I've done, and I go to preview in browser. Now keep in mind, I don't have a rule for a sub inside of a sub inside of a sub inside of a sub inside of a sub. So it's going to basically follow the same parent rules unless I created a rule for that. Similar to what I did by starting the video out by making that unordered list inside the unordered list a bigger typeface. So again, what I want to share with you is that the markup is the markup, but whether or not you have a rule for that, if you don't, so in this particular case, I don't have a rule for an unordered list inside of an unordered list inside of an unordered list. So if I did want to build that particular rule, if I don't, it's going to inherit from the rules I already have. Okay? So I'm going to just create a rule for that. So I'm going to say, okay, if I have that going on, and I'm going to create a rule for an A tag when it's inside of an unordered list, inside of an unordered list. Now, if you're new to HTML, an A tag is the anchor tag that basically means hyperlink. You get that by putting in the pound symbol. So I'm going to select this tag, select the tag, and make a rule. So this is going to make a combination rule, and I'm going to say less specific, of an A tag inside of an unordered list, inside of an unordered list. Now again, you don't have to make a rule that specific if you just want it to generically follow from the sub of the sub. But now I have a sub menu of a sub menu of a sub menu of a sub menu, and I would like to write a rule for that. So let's do that. So the rule we're going to do for this, now important to understand, and I go into great detail in my regular Dreamweaver full-length courses. Now you can either sign up for my all access pass, which is my greatest value of all. It's one fee that gives you lifetime access to all my current courses and all my future courses for life, which means 6 years from now when Adobe comes out with CS 10, 12, you're covered. You don't have to ever pay a fee again. Now that's considering I didn't, zip off to Belize or something, or south of Brussels. Just kidding. Although I'd like to retire in Brussels, I love Belgium. Ghent's my favorite city in Europe, but that's another side issue. Okay, so here's what we're going to do. We're going to say, okay, if we have a sub inside of a sub, let's make our text red, and let's make our background color yellow, just because we can. Now, if there's anything you see that's blank is going to inherit from the parents. I didn't have to talk to the size. I didn't have to change the font, etc., etc., etc. But if I did, just because we can, we are going to change the font. I'm going to make this a big, thick, horrible-looking font. And again, that was for this guy right here, which was the sub inside of the sub inside of the sub, which is part of my Illustrator, Dreamweaver, etc., etc. So if I go to File, Preview in Browser, Firefox, watch what happens. So I'm going to go to, where was it? Here, 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 boom, to there. So that's what it did. It put white copy inside of a yellow box. And it changed the font. See how this font is different from this font? Because that's what I told it to do. So in essence, that was the rule structure that me, the intelligent carbon-based one, told the software to apply those rules for that particular tag selector. Okay, so hopefully this breaks down and understand how I can create something very simple. And again, there's no JavaScript in here. This is just a bunch of rules for a bunch of tags. In fact, it's basically a series of different rules because I have things in a tag inside of an unordered list, inside of an unordered list. Then I have this in an a tag inside of an unordered list. So it's that type of thinking. But my objective is I get you involved in the thinking process to make this whole thing so incredibly simple by using Dreamweaver to build the code for you. My name is Robert DeFerro. Thank you very, very much for being here. And please, if you get a chance today, do something nice for somebody. Whether it's an elderly person next to a neighbor, do something nice for somebody, maybe a homeless person on the street, because I did something nice for you today by offering this free lesson. Now, please support what I do on my full-length videos on udemy.com. And again, you can check out some more free samples if you're not already on Udemy, if you're in YouTube or on one of my other I have 10, 12 YouTube channels, then simply go to udemy.com/think, learn, earn. Again, my name is Robert DeFerro. Enjoy the day. Carpe Diem 2013.